Hello everybody, my name is Zunder. I hope you're having a wonderful day because I am, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to change your FPS in Apex Legends. Now Apex recently has been blowing up a lot. I can see why. It's super fun, it's super easy to run around and just have fun in the game. There's no fall damage. A lot of the characters are fun, and yeah, it's just a blast to play. But the thing is, along with its great graphics, there is sorta a little bit of optimization problems, and this isn't entirely because the engine is bad, it's just because of how nice the game looks. It's harder for weaker PCs or weaker GPUs to run the game. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make the game run a lot better. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, and yeah, let's just jump right into it. Really quick before we start, just a little bit of a disclaimer, or the opposite of that. Everything that I tell you in this video will only affect Apex and won't, make your computer worse, because I see all these kinds of Apex videos that, they make your game run a little bit quicker, but they ruin the rest of your PC through all these weird things that optimize the game but slow down your PC. So all this is just going to affect Apex, and the rest of your computer will be perfectly fine. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. Now, first things first, obviously you're going to want to jump into Apex because that's where you're actually going to be able to change the settings. So the first thing you're going to want to do once you're on the main menu is go to the game menu and go to settings. You're probably going to be on the gameplay tab, but just scroll over to the video tab because that's where we're going to do practically everything for this game. First things first, the display mode. Now, for most of you guys, you're going to actually want to turn it to full screen because when you're in full screen, your entire computer focuses on that game while you're in windowed or borderless windowed. Your priorities of your computer are going to be half based in the game and half based on the background programs. So if you're in full screen, your entire computer is going to work to make the game run as fast as possible. So if you want the maximum FPS, I'd recommend going on full screen. Now, the aspect ratio, this generally just goes hand in hand with the resolution. If you want to have the maximum possible FPS, you're probably going to want to tinker around to see which aspect ratio allows you to have the lowest resolution, because resolution is really important in making FPS, seeing as you have less pixels on the screen, so it's obviously easier for your computer to, display less details. The maximum for the majority of you guys is probably going to be 1920 times 1080 and at 1619, or 16 times 9, sorry. But the lowest possible is probably going to be, 4x3 and then 1024 times 768. Yeah, I just checked. It's actually, that is the lowest one that you can get. Also, if you have a 4x3 screen, or rather you make the aspect ratio 4x3, then the entire screen is going to be stretched a little bit widescreen. So that's actually gives you a little bit of an advantage in gunfights because everybody is a little bit wider. If you didn't know, a lot of pro players in games like Counter-Strike use this because it makes everything wider and easier to shoot. So if you want to have that little bit of tactical advantage, you might as well want to go with the aspect ratio of 4x3. Anyway, for field of view, this is actually pretty important towards gameplay. If you have a higher field of view, you can actually see more of the game. Your view is kind of like you have a wider angle of your screen, like you have a widescreen angle, like as in a camera. But if you have it smaller, then your view is more narrow, kind of like you're looking through binoculars, and a little bit of a bad metaphor. But generally, if you have it lower, it's going to make your FPS a little bit higher because you're going to be seeing less things on your screen. While if you have it higher, you're going to be seeing more things on your screen and therefore are going to have less FPS. But generally, you're going to want to have it in the midsection because you don't want it to be too narrow, because you actually want to be able to play the game and see at least a decent amount of your game. Now we can just skip colorblind mode because it doesn't really matter and it doesn't really affect FPS. So yeah, should probably just keep that off. Now onto the advanced section, you're probably going to want to keep VSync off because VSync actually just kind of, in very general and simple terms, it kind of locks your FPS to be at the same FPS as your refresh rate of your monitor. So if you have a 60 FPS monitor refresh rate, then it's going to lock it at 60 FPS, so it kind of aligns the FPS with your refresh rate. But this in most situations just limits your FPS and is just not that good to have. Now adaptive resolution FPS target is, in pretty simple terms, it's pretty kind of new technology, I guess. At least we haven't seen in that many modern games. What it does is pretend, let's put it at 60. So if your FPS goes anything below 60 FPS, then it's actually going to make your video settings go down so that you can go up above that 60 FPS, and once you go over it, then it'll heighten the video quality so you can keep playing at a pretty high quality. Me personally, I don't know if I'd recommend this or not. I haven't tested it too much, but from my experience, I don't really like it because it kind of, bumps up the graphics and bumps it down. I like it to be consistent. So yeah, you can choose that if you think it's going to help you, but I personally don't think it's going to be that big of a help. Anti-aliasing, if you take it off TSAA and you put it to none, then it's going to buff up your FPS pretty considerably because it kind of splits pixels and makes them look a little bit nicer from a farther distance. So obviously turning it off will give you a pretty big FPS boost. Texture streaming budget. Now this kind of depends on how many gigabytes of VRAM you have, and let me repeat that, not normal RAM, because I have 8 gigabytes of normal RAM in my computer, but I have 6 gigabytes of VRAM. Probably should have 16 gigabytes of RAM to go with that video card, but whatever. So generally you're just going to want to match this to how much VRAM you have in your computer. A lot of people will have maybe like 2 gigabytes or like 4 gigabytes. Just try to match that, or if you really want FPS, then you're going to want to put it below. I have 6 gigabytes, but I never really put it on very high because I just don't need that much quality. I'd rather have a high FPS consistently, so I put it at, you know, medium or maybe even sometimes low. For texture filtering, the more you turn this down, just the more you're going to get more FPS, so I'd recommend turning that down because it really doesn't help that much in the game, especially when in Apex you're moving your screen so much and it's kind of hard to see the detail that you get from texture filtering. Once again, ambient occlusion quality, if you want to have higher FPS, you're going to want to turn this down. It doesn't make that big of a difference, but it does have a pretty considerable amount of difference in FPS compared to how much difference you actually see in quality. Like, I'm going to be entirely honest, from high and on disabled, I barely see a difference when I'm actually playing the game because you're mostly not just standing around staring at textures. You're probably going to want to have the FPS so you can win gunfights. Sun shadow coverage, this, I don't know, do you really like shadows that much? Sun shadow coverage and sun shadow detail, these are just the coverage of the shadows and how much detail the shadows have. I mean, if you really like shadows, you might as well have them on because they don't have that massive a difference. But to be honest, you know, there's still going to be the shadows there. I don't really care about shadows that much. Most of you probably don't care about shadows that much, so we should probably just turn that down because it does have an effect on FPS. Spot shadow detail is, as it says, detail that controls how detailed shadows are from lights in the environment. Once again, I really don't care about shadows as much. Why does it keep prompting me about shadows? Anyway, for the majority of you guys, it won't really matter that much. You're probably going to want to turn this to low or disabled because, you know, there's a lot of shadows in this game, and turning it off will also probably help with clutter on the screen because there's a lot of things to look at, and a lot of times the character models do not like show up that much against the environment, so you might as well turn it off as well for additional clarity in game. Turning off volumetric lighting just kind of makes the sunbeams not as much enabled, which in fact can give you a pretty decent advantage if you disable it because then the light is always going to be consistent so you can constantly see in the places where you should see. With volumetric lighting, sometimes the light comes on an area and then comes off, so sometimes you don't have as much clarity as someone who has it off. Same thing, but to a greater extent with dynamic spot shadows, as you know, the light can move as it says there. Dynamic spot shadows controls whether lights in the environment can move. I would disable this just so you have it consistent. And also, if you see something moving in the distance, you don't want it to just be a light. You want it to probably be a player. If something is moving in the distance and you know you have this setting disabled, then you will probably know that it is an enemy. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an advantage, but generally we're doing this for FPS, and turning all of these settings down will indeed help our FPS. Model detail will obviously change how detailed the models are, so you know you can turn this low, but if you really care about it, you can turn it to medium or high because you know the character models in this game look pretty nice, so I'm probably just going to keep it at medium. For effects, this is like explosions and things like that. I actually personally like to turn it all the way to low because if there is less clutter from the effects in gunfights, which there are going to be a lot of effects because there's a lot of explosions and such, if effects are at low, then you can see more of what's actually happening because there's not as much lens flare and all these explosions. Also, turning it down does help your FPS, and FPS is pretty important in a gunfight, so yeah, that also helps out too. Impact marks is just how many impact marks show up when you shoot something, so if you shoot a wall or something, it shows how many are going to stay there and how many are going to disappear, so you can just keep this off because it's kind of useless. Unless, of course, you're the kind of player who looks at all the walls that they're running past to see if anyone shot into them. Then you're going to be able to find where people have been and probably have no life. Now, ragdolls, what it actually does kind of surprise me. It says there that it controls how physically accurate the dead body animations are. Now, if you know anything about ragdolls in video games, then you probably know the less realistic, the funnier they are, so I'd recommend turning this down for fun. Also, if you have a weak CPU, they can really help, because ragdolls are pretty harsh on your CPU, but if you turn that down, then you'll be good. But if you indeed turn it too low, then you're also going to have pretty funny physical animations that occur when someone dies. So yeah, now once you're done with that, just click apply. Here are my full settings after I just went and done all the settings that we chose, except of course resolution because I want to keep that kind of high so it looks good on YouTube for you guys. But yeah, I'm just going to jump into a game and let's see what we can do with these settings. Let's show you how it looks, and yeah, let's try something. You know, even turning all these settings down, the game actually looks super nice. Anyway, just because of how nice the game looks just regularly. So yeah, let's just see how these graphics look in-game. Looks like we're trying to land on that, well, looks like we have landed in the wrong place. These textures always look bad, so you know, don't judge this all off that. And yeah, the game generally does not look that much worse than it did before. The game is just generally a really nice looking game. So yeah, and with the extra FPS that we're getting, it is a pretty good experience. Obviously, you can see a little bit of the effect of having no anti-aliasing, so you can turn that back on, as you can see up there. But aside from that, I can barely notice anything at all. Keeping in mind that I'm not that big of a, quality enthusiast, I always like to have more FPS. But yeah, even if I was, I don't think I'd recognize that big of a difference from how things normally are. I don't know why I just punched that thing. The game world still looks quite nice. Kind of looks like Borderlands a little bit more, even the slightest bit. It looks generally all the same, as it usually does in Apex. And yeah, I can barely see a difference. I gotta help my fellow gamers. Got him. Not the best experience. I'm gonna try to block this guy in. Never mind, I died. Anyway, thank you guys so much for checking out my video. It means a lot that you watched till the end. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed it or it helped you out. Don't forget to subscribe if you're a great person or if you're a bad person. I don't really judge. Comment if you have any suggestions. That's how this video is made. Or if you want to roast me or tell me something or anything else, just leave it in the comments. I will be sure to reply. And yeah, jump on the hype train. Got a lot of stuff in the works and I am so excited for the next few months on this channel. Hope you guys are too. And yeah, I cannot thank you enough for all the outrageous support recently. So yep, hope to see you guys again. And yeah, see you later. Peace. Bye. Goodbye. It's more formal, I guess.